So everybody, I don't really say this too often, but it looks like I was right. iOS 18.1 and iPadOS 18.1 are out, and that means Apple Intelligence, to an extent, is debuting. But before we get started, definitely consider becoming a channel member and supporting the channel, because you get some awesome wallpapers like the one that you see in this video, as well as some other nice perks like live podcasts, office hours, and much more. But without further ado, let's talk about Apple Intelligence on the iPad, everybody. So before we find out exactly what's new with 18.1, I do want to give a situation or let you guys know what's going on with the state of the beta update cycle. So technically, if you're on the developer beta, you have the opportunity to now switch into the 18.1 beta update. But that means you're foregoing the rest of the 18.0 updates. We got to 18.0 beta 4, but now you do have the option to switch to 18.1 beta 1, and that means, like I mentioned, you will no longer get any of the 18.0 updates, you will only be getting the 18.1 updates moving forward. So again, since we are dealing with a beta 1, there could be a bunch of performance issues, some bugs that need to be fixed, so only install this and install it at your own risk, and install it on a device that you don't think is going to be detrimental with any data loss or anything like that. I'm of course jumping in full tilt and putting it on my 15 Pro Max, but to each their own, everybody has their own risk tolerance. And then when it comes to supported devices, this is where it gets a little bit unfortunate. So as of right now, the only iPhone devices that are going to be supported by this are going to be the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max. You need to have an A17 Pro chip in your iPhone in order for this to work. That means even the iPhone 15 and the 15 Pluses will not be able to get Apple Intelligence in this update. But if you do have an M-powered device outside of that, so any M-powered iPad, any M-powered MacBook Air or MacBook Pro or Mac Mini, you will be able to update to macOS Sequoia as well as iPadOS 18.1 Beta 1 and get Apple Intelligence to a certain extent, because Apple didn't give us everything so far, just a few things that we're going to touch on. But now let's actually jump into exactly what Apple gave us with this 18.1 Beta 1 update. Let's get into it. And we're going to mostly focus on the AI features. Well, alright everyone, let's get right into this video, and I will say that we're going to be pretty much 100% focusing on the Apple Intelligence portion of this 18.1 update. There might be some other nuanced features that have come into the 18.1 world, but let's focus on the big headliner, which is that Apple Intelligence. Now, I'm using an M4 iPad Pro, so it does allow me to actually use Apple Intelligence, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of supported devices. And in terms of how actually big this was, if I go into the screenshot that I took, we're looking at about 805 megabytes in terms of size for this update. So give yourselves at least 2 gigs of open storage in order to get this installed and installed correctly. And if you're on the beta program and you're wondering how to get to the 18.1 section, when you first open up your general and look at the actual software updates section, on the bottom here you'll notice that there's a section for the 18.1 beta. So if you tap on there, it'll take you to this menu right here, and then you can install 18.1 beta 1 and be good to go. And then in terms of build number, if I go into my settings, go into general, go into about, and then click on 18.1, we're looking at 222B5007 lowercase p, which means we are a long ways away from getting the normal RC and then finally the public release. I'm thinking somewhere in the October range for 18.1 to be released. Now, the next thing to take into consideration is when you open up the Notes application, the first thing you're going to see is Apple Intelligence and Siri. And now, if you do open up and you do install to 18.1, this will not be readily available. You'll get this new option, but you're going to have to actually join the waitlist for Apple Intelligence and Siri. But then to show you what that looked like, you can see that it says join Apple Intelligence waitlist, and then if I scroll over, it shows you the Apple Intelligence, and it lets you know like new tools to express yourself, a new area for Siri, and then groundbreaking privacy. Now, it took me about 10 minutes, but again, I installed it pretty much the moment it was available, and after those 10 minutes, it basically opened up and said that I can actually turn it on, new tools to express yourself, a new area for Siri, groundbreaking privacy, and then you see that that little toggle now appears when it wasn't there before. So once you turn that on, then you get this new splash screen to let you know how to activate Siri, how to interact with it, how to type to Siri, which we'll touch on in a little bit, and then voila, you're good to go with the new kind of animation with Siri, and we no longer have that random bubble on the bottom right. So that is how you get Apple Intelligence to turn on, and that's how you actually join the waitlist and then start playing with it. But now, in terms of what's new with it and what you can do, let's see exactly what's going on. So to turn it on, let's actually just test it out first. So if I long press on here, the new animation shows up, and I can ask it, who won the USA basketball game yesterday? Who was the leading scorer? So again, it looks like it's still defaulting a little bit to how Siri acted in the past, but that's one way to interact with Siri normally. But now another way to interact with it is if I double tap down here, which is where the home button is, you can actually type to Siri. So I can say, So what's the weather tomorrow? Press return, press send over there, and then it's going to tell me what the weather is for Tuesday tomorrow in my area. So that is another way to interact with Siri. And now that type Siri can be accessed literally anywhere. So if I go into my notes application, make this bigger, and then double tap on the home button, or the home kind of bar, or whatever we're going to call it, it basically lets you interact with Siri from a typing basis anywhere in the OS, which I absolutely love, even if it's not visible. So as you can see, it's not visible here. Double tap, and now you can actually interact with Siri via type and text, and then you can also, of course, interact with Siri with your voice. So there are still a bunch of things missing when it comes to Apple Intelligence and what the capabilities are. For instance, we still don't have Genmojis or the playgrounds. We don't have a lot of that awesome interface. We're still missing all the new mail sections like priority mail and promotional mail and things like that, but there is some stuff baked into it. So the first thing I'm going to show you is if you go into the notes application, I actually just found this kind of history of the Miami Dolphins on the internet, and I copy and pasted it over. But what you can do here is actually double tap on here, maybe select all, and then you're going to be able to see that a new context menu shows up. So you have the ability to proofread it, rewrite it, or you have the Apple Intelligence button right there, and then it lets you give you a bunch of options in order to interact with this text. So I can proofread it, rewrite it, change it to friendly, concise, I can summarize it. So I'm going to make it sound friendlier, and then you can see that the animation starts to do its thing. It starts to change it up a little bit. You can kind of scroll through as it's doing it, and it's going to do it in real time to make it a little bit friendlier. So as it's typing it out, the perfect season, it just makes it, look a little bit friendlier in terms of the connotation and the way that it looks. And then I can just press revert to go back, which is good to see. And that is one way that Apple Intelligence is going to help us moving forward. So again, if I try to select it all and click on my writing tools, I can then actually just limit it to the key points, and it's going to summarize those key points for me. As you can see, I can just scroll through here and then use them as I see fit. So overall, I can actually copy it, press enter, paste it, and now those are the summarized bullets of all the different bullets that were up here before. So again, from a proofreading standpoint, from a writing tool standpoint, that is what you're going to get with this version of Apple Intelligence as of right now. So another area that I saw Apple's Intelligence kind of go into account here with this new beta update is if I go into the mail application, every single inbox mail that you have now has this summarize button. So if I tap on that, it's going to summarize this message on top so you can actually understand what's going on in just 1 or 2 lines. So this is, a promotional email from Lifetime Fitness. Then in terms of what you can do with it, you can press a little ellipses there and you can play looks good, something isn't right, and it's basically just to share feedback overall. So that is where you're going to see some implementation when it comes to using the Mail app and using Apple Intelligence to summarize a bunch of stuff. So technically Apple Intelligence and the new Siri should have a lot of context rules and be able to continue a conversation as you move forward. But as I'm testing this, it's not looking amazing. So for instance, if I long press on here, who is the Miami Heat's leading scorer? How many points did he score in his last game? When was that game? So as you saw there, the context rules sort of worked a little bit, but I was asking questions before about Miami Dolphins players and who the leading scorer was, and it took me to a Wikipedia page. So it really just depends on what situations you're in, and I'm sure it's going to get better over time. But for right now, what we're getting with Apple Intelligence is pretty much just being able to proofread and summarize and kind of change text and also transcriptions that are already built in here. Obviously, the new animations are very cool and awesome to see. But from an efficiency standpoint, I'm not seeing anything too crazy that we didn't have with the previous Siri. Hopefully that changes as more time goes on, but I just wanted to give you guys a deep dive into what we have so far. But keep in mind, this is the beta 1, this is the first version of it, so Apple's gonna kind of tiptoe its way into releasing all these different features, in my opinion, but leave some comments down below what you think. So that will do for this video, everybody. Like you saw, Apple Intelligence is technically here now with iOS and iPadOS 18.1, as well as macOS Sequoia 15.1. But it looks like Apple's really holding back on the capabilities of Apple Intelligence, everything that they touted during their WWDC keynote. Again, they're only really limiting it to being able to proofread things, to rewrite things, so kind of just text and writing tools essentially. There's still no Genmojis, no playgrounds, there isn't a lot of customization with Siri. The context rules for Siri are still very, again, they're in their infancy right now, so the context rules aren't working too well unless you kind of go through a very particular and obvious route like we saw earlier. So the animations are cool, being able to text to Siri is awesome even though we were able to do that before, it's just now a lot easier to access. Again, the future I think is bright for Apple Intelligence, it's just very early on. This is a beta 1, there's still going to be a learning curve, obviously Apple Intelligence is going to learn over time as well. So let me know with a comment down below, are you guys rushing to update to 18.1 on your iPhone or your iPad, or 15.1 on your macOS computer? I installed it on my iPhone and my iPad. I have not installed it on my Mac, and I don't plan on installing it on my Mac, but let's see how it evolves as the 18.1 betas begin to kind of iterate on itself with beta 2 and 3, and Apple giving us just a little bit more as they kind of tiptoe their way into giving us more features. But that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And if you guys want to watch more videos like this one, click on one of these right here. And until next time, I'm Fernando, and I'm out of here, everybody. Peace. I'm excited to see exactly what Apple has in store with Apple Intelligence. Let's find out.